Hi, I'm Marvin Heyman of Marvin Heyman & Associates, author of the ebook, U.S. Federal Government Design Build Strategies for Success. We help you design and build your business to find, win, and successfully perform U.S. federal government contracts. So why am I doing this video? Well, to dispel myths. First, working in the federal government market is not about a get-rich-quick theme. It is about hard work and investment. But what I hear out there is a lot of myths going on. For example, in the sole source procurement world. Sole source procurement, yes, the government does this, but you could pay $500 to somebody and spend 2 or 3 days traveling and the expense of being there to learn about sole source procurement. So in a couple of weeks, for 10 minutes, you're going to learn about how sole source procurement works and save yourself a lot of trouble and effort. Also, I hear out there about these magical $100,000 letters. The federal government trains their people very well in the federal acquisition regulations, and when they buy something, they really understand how this works. And so your goal is to know the rules to their game as well as they do. They do not fall prey to these silly tactics that people are espousing out there. And also review boards. One of the things I want to talk about today are one of the myths out there is how review boards look at proposals and how this works with them. So how am I able to talk about review boards? Well, for 30 years, I've been helping businesses find, win, and successfully perform U.S. federal government contracts. In the 1980s, I was trained by the United States Department of Energy to write solicitations, lead these review boards, be a negotiator on behalf of the federal government, and be a contracting officer's representative on behalf of the federal government. So I wrote many solicitations, led several review boards, negotiated many deals with companies against companies like you on behalf of the federal government. And I was a contracting officer's representative and managed companies like yours on behalf of the federal government. In 1990, I left the federal government to become a general contractor and an architect competing for U.S. federal government contracts as well as private sector contracts. I wrote, produced, and directed a video training series on U.S. federal government contracting, usually available through my website. What I learned about best value selections over the last 30 years. First, it's the U.S. government's goal to award contractors to offers that pose the least risk to them with a fair and reasonable price. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means as we move on in this video. So, let me give you a best value award example. You have an automobile, 2 automobiles. You're trying to decide which one you want to purchase. 2 different dealers, 2 different automobiles. One dealer gives you an incentive, oil changes for life, to get you to buy his vehicle. The other one says, I'm going to upgrade the radio to get you to buy his vehicle. Which one to you would be best value? Well, that's what the government decides also. They're going to talk about in these solicitations what it takes for them to understand what is best value to them. So, what is best value with the automobile? Upgrade of the oil change or the upgrade of the radio. Those are called incentives. In the federal government world, those are also known as betterments. Okay? So, also, you need to understand, before we get into this, that review boards select who they want based on emotion and justify their selection on the facts presented in the proposals. So, there's a little hint there that you can't assume that the government will go outside the proposal. Actually, it can't go outside the proposal to gather information about you or your company with the exception of checking references. So today, we're going to talk about fixed price contracts, best value awards. I find it very helpful to understand the makeup of the review board and how this works. First, you have a contracting officer who is in charge of the procurement. They have a legal team associated with them to make sure that they do things above board. Then the contracting officer usually hires or elicits the help of a review board. Now, the review board are people who are normally employed in the federal government or with one of the operating contractors, for example, but they normally have a 40-hour-a-week job, at least. So what they're asked to do is to step out of that role and be on these review boards and look at proposals. And we're going to talk about the significance of that in a little bit. They have to continue their role, their 40-hour-a-week jobs, at the same time doing this work. So what they're going to want to do, okay, is only human instinct, is to get through this as quickly as possible because they have to go back to work. So the contracting officer has a review board. The leader of the review board is usually the person who coordinated writing the solicitation, the technical sections of the solicitation. Helping the leader decide which one to choose are voting members. Now the voting members can be 2, 3, 4, 5 people. We don't know. But basically they are people who probably are not technically savvy. Could be the using agency. Could be the administrative assistant of the contracting officer. It could be the administrative assistant of the legal group. You don't know who the review board are, and they keep this secret. Now helping the review board are technical members. Technical members, or the technical team, are probably people who wrote the sections within the solicitation. They are advising the voting members on if a proposal meets the minimum requirements or doesn't meet the minimum requirements, for example. Okay, so how does this work? So here's a chart in time. Basically, your proposals are submitted to the contracting officer. They will always be in at least 2 books. The price proposal, which is where your price is at, and then of course you have your what they call technical proposal. Now, what's going on here is the review team down here at the bottom does not see your price proposal. Okay, they want the review team to make a choice on who they would, who's the best value, basically, or the best choice technically, and then they marry this up later on with the dollar. So we're going to get into this in a second. So what happens first is that on volume 1, the price proposal, the contracting officer is going to do a sort. First off, he's going to do a sort on did they meet the minimum requirements of the solicitation, and there's a lot of items that are pass-fail in this particular section, like price, for example. Did they take any exceptions to the price? Did they override what the government's CLINs are, contract line items? The government's very clear about how they want you to price this thing out. If anybody took exceptions to the price, they will put your proposal aside. Another big one is, was your proposal submitted on time? If it wasn't submitted on time, they will not even look at it. Was there an expiration date on your proposal? One of the things that the government requires is an expiration date, giving them, for example, 30, 60, 90 days to review your proposal before you are allowed to change your numbers. There's things like, did you sign half the contract, which is either the 1442 or 1449, for example. Did you include your reps and certs? This is all pass-fail type of things. If they required bonding or financial information, did you include it? If they required financial information, did you include it? CCR is always going to be required, CCR information, which is information on if you're a legitimate business or not. It's a pass-fail situation. Sometimes they ask information about your safety. And then, of course, if this is a large business procurement, they're going to ask you for your small business plan, all of which these items are pass-fail. Now, what the contracting officer is doing is they're going through here pass-fail, and anyone who fails any of these things, they will pull your proposal out of the running, as well as your Volume 2 proposal. So, of the ones that are remaining, the Volume 2 proposals, they get presented to usually the leader of the review board. Now the leader of the review board does another sort. He's going to do a credibility sort and sometimes a technical sort. And what they're looking for is under past performance. Do you have enough past performance to be considered a legitimate offeror? If you don't, the leader will then set your proposal aside, calls the contracting officer, and they pull the appropriate Volume 1 proposal out of the running. They may have a check, a pass-fail check, a credibility check on your key personnel. They may call some references and see where they are standing. So, and then eventually, when they get through this sort, okay, they're finally going to look at your technical proposal. So that gets us to the 80-20 rule. 80% of the solicitations, 80% of the proposals the government receives for any one particular solicitation do not get reviewed. They don't meet the minimum requirements, so the government can't review them. 20% do get reviewed, and of those 20%, they go to the review team, and then they look at your technical proposal, or basically what you're selling and how you're going to accomplish the work. So this gets back to what we talked about. If the government receives 30 proposals, instead of these people who have full-time jobs anyways looking at all 30 proposals, they want to get rid of proposals so that they can reduce the amount of effort that the review board has to look at things, and then they can get back to work. Okay, so while the review team is looking at the 20% of those proposals that survive, the contracting officer then is checking price yet again. And what they're checking here on price is to make sure that the price, first off, is fair and reasonable to the government and to the offerer, as well as being things in the affordable range. Now, what's the affordable range? Basically, you've got a government estimate that the government will do before the solicitation hits the streets. And what they're looking for is offers that are plus or minus 10% close to, around the government estimate. If it's plus or minus 10%, the contracting officer can very simply award contracts if it proves out technically. If it's above 10% or sometimes below 10%, the contracting officer is suspect that maybe the offerer forgot something. So to be fair and reasonable, they may be contacting these people to see if they forgot anything, especially if they like their technical proposal. Up in this arena up in here, which is above 10% and usually up to like 25%, the contracting officer, if they like a proposal that is in this area, the contracting officer will probably have to go a little higher up on the and look at the, for example, the program manager or a budget office or something like that to see if there's enough money to award in this area. So what the contracting officer is doing, they're doing something like this, a bid summary of sorts. What they're doing is they're probably going to say, here's the government estimate, and then basically here's the highest bidder and the lowest bidder, and then usually in descending order, company J, F, G, A, E, L, and V are the ones who kind of passed the credibility and the pass-fail type things initially. So now what the contracting officer is looking at is saying, well, look at V is at $700,000, which is way, way below the government estimate, probably forgot something. So we're going to pull V out of the running. And then they're going to call over to the review board and literally just pull V out of the running because they're probably too low. Then they're going to look at J, and J's price is way too high, and there's probably no way that J is going to be able to get down into the awardable range, in their opinion. So they'll call over to the review board, for example, and pull out J's proposal and take it out of the running. So what that leaves us with F, G, A, E, and then L. Now you'll notice that L is almost in the awardable range, and then F is out of the awardable range, but close. So there may be a way to negotiate them down into the awardable range, especially if they like F and L's technical proposal. Then what the contracting officer does is they assign, they go to the most legitimate low bidder, which in this case is E, and because it's within the awardable range, and then they assign them all the points that they would have gotten in the in a solicitation, and then they will never divulge these points, but basically there's a point system that's associated with this. Of course, then being 10% less, then A gets a little bit less points, and then G gets less points, and then F gets less points. If you notice down here, they still have L in the running, but no points. What they're going to check, if they like L's technical proposal, they're probably going to call them up and find out if they missed anything, and give them an opportunity to amend their price, especially if they like their technical proposal. And then what they'll do, if they do have everything in there, they'll adjust these numbers accordingly. So, now, the review board is looking at the technical proposal, and in this particular scenario, this is going to be a small business set-aside, for example. We're going to have a little pretend session here, a small business set-aside solicitation, and what they have done is they've given past performances basically going to be worth 25 points, but they're going to never divulge that there's actually points associated with this. They're actually going to convert these into words, like the technical proposal is almost as important as past performance, but the technical proposal is much more important than schedule, and then past performance past performance, and that sort of thing. And what they're going to say something like this, they're going to say schedule, technical, and past performance all added up is equal to price. So what they're doing is they're trying to assess values to each one of the offers that they're looking at, F, G, A, E, and L, for example, and they're going to assign points. So the leader fills out a sheet on the on each item, on each contractor's proposals, and they're going to score these things. And as you can see, F has a pretty good score, not great, but pretty good score, but maybe there's enough there to keep them in the running. Remember that these people here do not have any idea what's going on with price. All they're looking at is the technical proposal. So they kind of like F's technical proposal. G's technical proposal here forgot to put in a schedule. A's technical proposal forgot to put in a schedule, for example. E, they're kind of cool on E's technical proposal and past proposal, for example. And L, they like L. L had a pretty good past performance rating, had a real strong technical performance, and they have a great schedule. So what's going to happen is that this L is going to go back to the contracting officer, and that contracting officer then is going to, they're going to put the chart back to the contracting officer, and the contracting officer then is going to add his numbers in, and he's going to see here that L is really strong, and what they're going to do is probably call L and ask them to look at their price again and tell them there's probably something missing. So they'll be writing a letter to them, or maybe even a phone call, and saying, look, you might want to look at your price. And when they get that new price in, they'll readjust these numbers. Now, what the review boards are doing is they're going to be writing down all the betterments that have been offered in the proposal. Betterments, of course, are also known as incentives. And then what they're going to do also is they're going to have review team discussions, and they're going to discuss why, for example, they graded this one down from the technical proposal, and why they graded this one down from the technical proposal. They're going to explain this in words. These words will eventually end up in a letter going to the offerer. So what happens then is this table, the contracting officer finishes the table eventually and then reports back to the review board. And this is where it comes into the emotional issue. If the favorite did not win, and there's a way for that review board to get that favorite by re-looking at these proposals again, by entering into discussions or whatever they need to do to get their favorite, the review board then will give feedback to the contracting officer who they want to enter into discussions. So basically what we got over here is this is basically a chart explaining how this works. The review board has decided that they want to enter into discussions with F and L. They think that their proposals technically are the best as well, but the prices, though, are a little bit out of line. But one other added feature over here you see on this chart is that the set-aside status is now being known, that this is a small business. This particular G was a service-disabled business, 8A for A, and then the E is just a small business, and then L is a subzone business. So we're looking at F and G. Now, the contracting officer is really pushing for L, because this is a small business set-aside project, but because L is also a hub zone business, he can get double credit here, or 2 stars, for example, for awarding. Now, what they're going to do is negotiate with F and L, and then, of course, you have then these remaining 80% of these proposals sitting over here in a pile that can be used as a backup plan. We'll talk about that a little later. So, the contracting officer then enters in discussions with a letter usually, and what they're going to do is these numbers that are in here, they're going to translate it back into the words in the solicitation. Your past performance was graded at relative importance to the solicitation. Your technical proposal was graded as either outstanding or average or whatever, however the words are in the solicitation. They're going to translate those back into those words. They're going to offer up clarifications if there's something they don't understand, because your proposal becomes your contract. That's why you have a 1442, a 1449. That is the contract signing page. So basically what they want to do is make sure that it's absolutely clear they understand what they are getting. So that's where they do clarifications. They're also going to note weaknesses and strengths in your proposal. And they're going to give you, with this letter, they're going to give you a certain amount of time to respond back to them. Don't ask them for any more time, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to wrap this thing up pretty quickly. So you're going to respond to your weaknesses, you're going to respond to any clarifications, and you're going to give this back to them as a letter. Sometimes they will ask you to revise your proposals, for example, with this new information. With this new information, they're going to make a selection. Then they're going to write letters to everybody else. Who did not win, and also letters to the winner. Usually the winner gets a phone call, and then follow up with a letter. But then they're going to offer everybody debriefs, and then the letter, it's going to give the reasons why or why not you were not selected. And they're going to translate these numbers back into the words in the solicitation. The numbers are only for their use. They will not admit to these numbers. Legally, they cannot, but they have to find a way to quantify things. So this is basically how we did things. Within our group, it was very secret, but then we translated everything back into solicitation language. So, once again, the U.S. government wants to award contracts to those offers that pose the least risk to them with a fair and reasonable price. First off, you understand past performance is that your business has done the work before, and which lowers the government's risk that the work will be accomplished in accordance with their expectations. And if you've done the work before, they can trust your price. Technical proposal is what you are selling and how you plan to accomplish the work. It gets into specifications sometimes. It gets into schedule. It gets into your project management plan, sometimes quality control plans, safety plans, key personnel issues. So they're trying to see and understand how you're going to be, what you're selling to them and how you plan on accomplishing the work. Your price has got to be fair and reasonable to you and the government. Your goal is to get you into the awardable range, lower or higher. You've got to get down into the awardable range. And of course, betterments will only be considered if things are close or there's a tie. Like in the example of the automobile, things were a tie, so the incentives or the betterments were offered to see if that something will break the tie. So what happens when the government exceed all the proposals come in and they exceed the government estimate, or the ones that they're interested in exceeds the government estimate? Well, if they're interested in this, they go get more funding, even if they advertise the actual amount of money that they have available for the project. This happened to me once, where the government said, I have, $9 million available. So I gave them a proposal for $9 million. I had to adjust the solicitation to give them what they wanted at $9 million. It was a design-build project. I did not give them any betterments or anything along those lines. But what the government did is they awarded somebody for $11 million. So I asked them, how can you do this? You said that's all the money you have in the solicitation. They said, we can always get more money, and that's what they did. They liked these other people enough where they went to somebody and asked them, some budget group, and they asked them for more money, and they got that more money. Another thing is they can ask everybody, or one or two, for what they call best and finals. And they can say, give me your best and final number. You do not know, if they're asking everybody, you won't even know how many people that they're even considering. The solicitations that they have, in this case 5, the 5 people will not even know that there's other solicitations that they're considering. So sometimes they're going to be asking you for best and final, and you don't even know if you're bidding against yourself. So that's something to understand. If they're all over budget and they or kind of scrambling around for what to do, sometimes I've offered alternate solutions. So, and when I know that the government solicitation and the dollars that they have, sometimes they advertise, are not in balance with each other. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll give them a proposal to meet their scope of work, a dollar proposal, and then I'll give them an alternate to meet their budget. So it's a little bit of extra work in the proposal, but on the end, they have an alternate solution that they may look at in the end, in the interest of time. Or they may ask for everybody to go and provide alternate solutions that they're interested in. And if that doesn't work, the desperate attempt is to look at that pile of 80% out there. Is there anything in there that they can consider as an alternate for this best value procurement? If they can't find anything, if everything's over budget or they're not getting what they want, they can just cancel the solicitation. So I hope you find that this session was very helpful and informative. I'll be looking for my other future sessions in the next coming weeks, and I appreciate you for listening. Thank you.